It just impresses the hell out of me. The PlayStation Classic Mini thing, call it what you like, you know what it is. It's a PlayStation sort of ARM-based thing that plays PlayStation 1 games, and let's be honest, straight out of the box at the price it originally sold for, it wasn't a very good deal. Some of the games were good, some of them weren't, but it was like you got those games and that was it. And it was initially something like £100 if I remember rightly. It didn't sell well and they dropped the price quite quickly. I don't remember exactly what I paid for this. Was it probably in the region of £40? It might have been 36, my brain is saying, but I don't believe my brain half the time. And even at that price, it was, I suppose it was just about worth it. And then it got hacked. A couple of different programs, whatever, firmwares that we used to hack this. One was called Auto Bleem, which I've never tried, and one called Bleemsync, which is the one that I used. And I've done a video showing what this thing is like with Bleemsync on board. And it made it a much more interesting device. Could play other systems and you could add your own games. Cool. There is a new custom firmware that has been released. It's like an update to Bleemsync, but it's more, well, it's just more really, called, how do you pronounce that, Eris? Link to it down there. I'm not going to tell you how to set this thing up with Eris or any of the technical info. There are 2 videos on the Eris homepage that explain how to install it. I'm also going to put some links in the info bar down there that tell you, there's one with a link to a page where, with, what do they call them, mods. You'll see what they are in a bit, but there's also a video on how to install mods somewhere. I'll link to that down there as well when I find it. There's a page down there for RetroArch Cores, very useful, and another link down there for a full BIOS set for RetroArch, which is very useful. I mean, you might have some BIOS files, but it's like having that. You just bung that in there and hey presto, you've got everything. Very handy. I'm not going to tell you where to get ROMs and stuff like that from. Figure that one out yourself. I'm going to plug this in and show you what it's like. Okay then, this is what you first get when you boot up the PlayStation Classic with Project Eris installed. Project Eris in the middle takes you to the PlayStation game selection screen. What's that thing? That carousel thing with some extras, which I'll show you in a minute. You've got RetroArch on the left, you've got Emulation Station on the right, and because I've installed some mods, we've also got a PSP thing there, which is also accessible from this Project Eris page, but not from Emulation Station, which is weird. We'll have a look at this first. All the usual stuff. There it is, there's your carousel, all the standard games and the games that I've added. There are 1 or 2 extra games there. This takes you back to the screen we were just on. This is drastic. It's the Nintendo DS emulator. Folder menu. It lets you make folders with groups of games from within that carousel. I haven't bothered doing it, can't be bothered, don't care. Game manager. Do you know what? I've never even looked at this. What does this do? I don't know. Oh, it lets you delete games. Yeah, if you've got games that you put on your yes, if you've got games that you put on your SD card, it'll let you delete them rather than having to unplug it and put it in your computer and do it that way, which is handy if you've installed a game that doesn't run, and that has certainly happened with me more than once. Ppsspp, that is another mod, which you click that, it goes through to the PSP emulator. And then RetroArch, which is like the emulator package that runs all the other systems other than PSP and DS. Those aren't on it for some reason. So these are like standalone emulators, if you like. I don't know why you get PSP on the Project Eris page but not Drastic. Not a clue. It's kind of, there are inconsistencies. But anyway, let's where do I want to go? I want to go back here. And we'll have a look at Emulation Station. Because this is the pretty bit if you want to play other systems. And it's a lot like the screen you get on, or that I've got on my Raspberry Pi. It's actually not, you see, you've got that there, but that doesn't actually work from here. You try and load something and it will not have any of it, probably. Yeah, because I haven't got a PSP core on Emulation Station that I'm aware of. If I have, it certainly isn't working. Shame, but there you go. It's put that there on the cross-media bar, or whatever you want to call it, because I've got PSP ROMs. It's like it knows there's PSP stuff going on. It doesn't know that it can't play them. Same with DS. All the other stuff works. It's not necessarily straightforward getting things to work. Sega CD or Mega CD is problematic. RetroArch, for reasons that I do not understand, the core that it uses, it wants to launch the game from the bin file where it should use the Q file. When it launches from the bin file, it will run the game, but you don't get any of the audio or the music because you need the Q file to tell it where the music files are. So that doesn't work right, and that's doing it from RetroArch. Emulation Station is a front end to RetroArch, and Emulation Station is telling it to launch the Q file. Only RetroArch still, it won't play the game from the Q file. So you try and launch a game from here, and not only do you not get the music, you don't get the game at all. So that's kind of broken. Yeah, most of these systems work. Little bit of difficulty with MAME. There is buried within the file structure of RetroArch is another folder for MAME, where it wants the ROMs to be. It doesn't want the MAME ROMs where all your other game ROMs go. It wants them in that specific thing. You'll have to dig around in there and put them all in there. That's a pain in the ass. Neo Geo, I had everything, like all my BIOS packs and everything installed, but it still didn't want to work until I found out that you actually need your system BIOS files zipped and in your games folder, your game ROMs folder, and then it works. Go figure. So Dreamcast, yeah. We're going to have a look now. I'm going to launch games from RetroArch rather than from Emulation Station, just because it gives a little bit more... Well, I know it's going to work, where on here it's a bit hit and miss, to be honest. But that's like the nice, pretty front end that mostly works. It's nice that it's there. I mostly don't bother with it. I launch stuff from RetroArch. Okay, we'll have a look at I mean, put a sentence together, Steve. You know things like SNES and Mega Drive and Game Boy and NES and all of those 16-bit era things and PS1, obviously, are going to work. You know that. What might not work? We will have a look at the Dreamcast, first of all. What am I doing? Load content. Start directory. Dreamcast. Now I've got a few games here. Super Runabout. I can't make it work. From what I can tell, this only wants to run CDI, game images. Super Runabout I've got on a GDI, which is like uncompressed, and it doesn't want to know. So we'll have a look at Res, and then we'll have a look at Crazy Taxi. And I've got 2 cores. Flycast, bleh. Rycast, yeah, that works okay. Flycast did work, but as it came out of the box, so to speak, well, I've tweaked the settings because it was set on like low res, and while the frame rate was good, it looked bloody awful. It was just a pixelated mess. So I've tweaked it, and on some games that's absolutely fine, like on here, on res, it's lovely. I don't know why I've got a Spanish ROM. Come on. As you can see, that's really quite, well, it's what you'd expect of res. It might, oh dear, I lost my blue thing. It might be a little bit slow. I'm not completely sure about that, but it's totally playable. The frame rate, I think I've got a frame skip set at about 1. Other game, I think on a Crazy Taxi, I might have it set to about 2. You get a little bit of slowdown there where it does that whizzy thing as you skip up to the next level. But it works. Okay, we'll bang out of that. Close content. We'll have a look at res. It's a shame it doesn't just restart in the folder you were in. Instead makes you go all the way back. I want to remove that Flycast core because there's no reason for it to be there. I didn't notice any improvement over Rycast, and it just bugs out in places. But it does when you increase the resolution. I'm gonna have to. Oh, hang on. Can we turn the music off? Yeah. It's tragic to have to do that because the music on this game is excellent, but it's copyright music, and I would get. Yeah, all right. I don't really want to get it on. Yeah, gotta turn the music off because copyright. And it's lame without the music. So out of the box, the resolution was something like 320 by 240, which was rubbish. It was a pixelated mess. It looked terrible. Wow, this sucks without the music. So I've upped the resolution, but the consequence of that is the frame rate suffers. I've got a frame rate here, a frame skip rather, of I think it's 2. Which makes it a little bit, well, it's not the silky smooth experience you'd get on a real Dreamcast. But it is playable. I mean, there would be some people who would say, oh, that's unplayable, that's just too jerky. I don't know, millennials. if you're my age, you grew up playing Jeff Crammond's Grand Prix on an Amiga 600 with a frame rate of like 2 or 3 frames a second, or 6 or 7 if you were lucky. I mean, it was a slow jerk fest at times, or Elite, where it was maybe 2 frames a second on an Acorn Electron. So, you know, this kind of frame rate is just fine. Yeah, okay, so that works. I don't know how many games will work on that, to be honest, because I've only got a couple of games in the CDI format. Most of what I've got is in GDI, so don't know. Okay, we'll have a look at the N64, because that's another one that is borderline, and I'm gonna have to actually. Mario Kart 64 requires a joypad with analog controllers, which I'm using this, which hasn't got analog controllers. Mario Kart 64 is playable. Plug a PS3 joypad in and that'll work just fine, but I haven't got a PS3 pad plugged in at the moment. Other games, not quite so much. We'll have a look at this. I have tried all 3 cores. Mupen 64 Plus is still the best one as far as I can tell. So it works, but not well enough, I would say. The sound, I've got the sound down because actually it sounds pretty awful. It's very stuttery and nasty, and I have tweaked to try and, you know, get as good a frame rate as I can get. But this is maybe back in like the 90s. If I hadn't got an N64 and I had something that could emulate it at this kind of standard, I would probably play it and be quite happy. But things have come a long way since then, and this is not really good enough. You know, it works, but where Crazy Taxi, I think, was going at an acceptable speed, this, no, not really, because the sound is all over the place. It's just, well, I will turn it up. See what I mean? You wouldn't. So yeah, N64 is going to be hit and miss, really. What did I just do? That. Okay. Now where it gets interesting is with the plugins. When I say plugins, I mean mods. That's what they're calling them. They're calling them mods. We'll have a look at the PSP one. This, I would say, struggles a bit. I've got a few games. These are the best ones I've tried. Okay, we'll have a look at Gran Turismo because it's Gran Turismo and it's the one that I usually wind up putting on. And I will put it on the Monaco circuit because that's the one I use to test the performance of it. You'll have, if you've been watching my videos over a number of years, you'll have seen me test various different devices with PSP emulation, and I always go to Gran Turismo and I always go to Monaco, and you can see how well it runs compared to the other systems I've tried. And I also discovered something which I'll show you if I remember, but brain being what it is, I might not remember. Okay. We don't want to go to the Nürburgring. Well, not at the moment anyway. Did I tell it to put the driving line off? Okay, good. I thought I'd got it on for a moment there. Don't want it on. Alright, we'll have a go at that. So that looks pretty nice. Audio isn't stuttering too much. We've got it on 2x resolution. And it's not perfect, but it's not terrible. Again, it's that if you played F1 GP on an Amiga 600 or 500 back in the day, this will be perfectly acceptable. If you're looking for perfect 60 frames a second, or 50 if you're in the UK, this won't cut it if things like that bother you. But I mean, you've got this running at twice the resolution of a PSP. If I had, back in the PS1 days, if I had had a game that looked like this and ran like this, my mind would have been blown, because obviously it looks a shit ton better than Gran Turismo on the PS1, albeit the frame rate ain't quite there. But nevertheless, it's very pretty. So that's quite pleasing. Remember how to get out of there. Exit to menu. No, come on. Door. There. Right. Wipeout. Again, we're at 2x resolution. No, not really. And that's really quite nice. So I've got Wipeout. What have I got? Is it Wipeout 3? I think it's Wipeout 3 for PS1 on here, though it won't run on the main PS1 emulator. I have to run it from RetroArch. I should be calling it RetroArch. It is RetroArch because it's like short for archive, but I see it and read it and that says Arch. Whatever. Yeah, so this looks a whole lot better than the PS1 game. Frame rate is nice. The frame rate does slow down every so often, but it's still pretty impressive. I mean, is that up there with a PS2 game? It ain't far off. It just impresses the hell out of me. Okay. Ridge Racer. Was this even released in the UK? I don't remember seeing this. I've got Ridge Racer, I think it's Ridge Racer 5 or something like that on my actual PSP. And it ain't this. This seems to be like a remake. No, not really. Yeah, I don't care. Alright. No miles. I don't know what we're doing here. I just want to race. What? We only just got moving. Keep it up. So it's pretty good. It's actually running better than it was running yesterday. When I was playing it, I seem to be in a different race mode somehow, I think. I mean, this is the original Ridge Racer circuit, so I do know where I'm going. It's nice, you know, resolution-wise and detail and everything is better than the arcade game. Frame rate, decent enough. So yeah, it's safe to say it's all working quite well. MotoGP, that works fine. I'm going to skip that. I'm going to go to this because this is just, I love this. This is so good. Yay. See, I've been playing this. I absolutely love this game. And I don't know if I've got frame skip on here. I might have actually. Doesn't seem to matter all that much. It's just glorious. I think it might run a little bit smoother than this if I tweaked and put the frame skip back down. But yeah, PSP emulation. While not everything will run, I tried Test Drive Unlimited, and it's just like, forget it, don't bother, don't even try. You'll cry. The frame rate is so low. It's just not worth it. You're not going to get God of War working on here. I think the Grand Theft Autos, maybe you might get slightly glitchy sound if you can get a decent frame rate. It's always a compromise between sound and frame rate on these things. Yeah, so that's that. Actually, we'll just... No, we can't do it like that. I'm trying to do the start and select buttons together to bang out of there. That would work in RetroArch, but we're not in RetroArch. Okay, we'll have a look at Drastic, which is the Nintendo DS emulator. This is an interesting one. I've used this on various handhelds, and I actually prefer it on them because it lets you do a thing, and I'll show you. Mario Kart. It's got to be Mario Kart, hasn't it? It puts the two screens one above the other, which, fine. That's how it is when you're playing the handheld. And also your A and B buttons are reversed, and that's really just bloody whatever. Yeah, fine. I can't be bothered to edit it. Single player. So the thing with this, I'll show you. Oh, just get running. Come on, go. So as you can see, it works just fine. It's a little bit irksome when you've got a whopping great big telly to have a game in a small screen like that. You can do, if I can remember how, there, L2, you can, where is it? Change options, screen orientation, vertical, single, horizontal. We'll bang it on horizontal. Trying to remember how to get back to the game. Exit, save for this game. Return to game. There. So you can do that. Ooh. So you've got a bigger screen, but it's also... having the screen there on the right is actually really bloody distracting now. I'm just nitpicking. The thing is, what you could do on the handheld versions of this game was have your second screen, which for the most part is a very limited usefulness. You could make it smaller. You could make that screen smaller, make that screen bigger, and position that screen wherever you liked. So I'd have this bigger and stretched out that way, and this as a little screen there in the bottom right hand corner, and that I thought was great, and I don't know why they haven't done it on here. That was a much better way of doing it. But there are games where that's not what you would want to do. There are games where you will want that vertical layout, because you'll see. I mean, this is a great game, but that music sounds to me like Status Quo as remixed by Fatboy Slim. Whoops. But anyway, you've got this line here, which is... I'm just going to turn that down because I don't want copyright strikes. You've got this line where it doesn't match up. What's on the bottom screen doesn't line up perfectly with what's on the top screen, and I understand why that is, because they the screens on the actual proper hardware, you would have a plastic bar there because of the hinge, and so it's like you're looking through windows and there's a window frame in the way. They wouldn't match up perfectly. There would be a gap with where you can't see what's behind it. But of course, when you're doing it like this, that makes it look a little bit weird. It would have been nice to have the option of having like a graphical window frame hinge thing to make it work a little bit better. But nitpicking, you can play the game, and I need to get this for my DS. I've never actually played it before yesterday, and I'm really impressed by it. So the way I'm doing things lately, I probably don't want to get the original game. I want to get an R4 cartridge. But there you go. Shocking. So that is pretty much it. Things that are different on this, or that you can do that you can't do on Bleemsync. Well, you've got the mods, plugins, call them what you like, the PSP and the DS, which just by themselves I think actually make it worth the upgrade, and it's not a difficult thing to do. Like I said, there is a link in the info bar below that shows you how to do that. There's a video. It's worth doing it just for those two emulators. RetroArch, I mean, RetroArch is as good or as bad as you can be bothered to make it. It's already on Bleemsync. Have they improved or optimized it? Couldn't tell you. And this new carousel thing, yeah, if things like that are your cup of tea, cool, you know, being able to have folders and remove or manage your game files, yeah, why not? That's handy. And then what do you call it, Emulation Station, basically a nice pretty front end for RetroArch. It's flawed, it doesn't always work, but once you've got the whole thing configured and you've tinkered and you've found out what's causing problems, like I did with the Neo Geo, usually when you've got a problem, it's just going to be that you either haven't got a core installed in RetroArch, or you haven't got the BIOS files, or your BIOS files are in the wrong place, and it takes a lot of tinkering. I've spent a couple of days messing with this to get it fairly functional. I'm going to carry on tinkering with it, trying, like Amiga works. I've managed to play a couple of games, but you'll need a USB hub, at least a two-way, because you'll want a joypad plugged in, but you also want, like, I'm going to plug one of these into it, USB, Bluetooth, whatever, keyboard and touchpad for mouse, because you'll need mouse and keyboard for the Amiga, so one of those will do the trick. Yeah, it's got a lot of potential. That's what I'll say. And just for the PSP and the DS, I do think it's worth the upgrade. I think that's about all I've got to say, really. So, if you do this, you do it like it's on you. Don't blame me if it goes wrong. And if you do this as well and you're running into technical difficulties and you can't work out how to make something work, honestly, don't ask me. Because the only way I managed to make it work was trial and error. And do you think I can remember any of the things I did to make it work? No, I cannot. I just know that it works now. I don't make notes as I'm going along. I'm just like, try this file or that file or whatever. I couldn't tell you. I do get a thing like years later, someone will look at my videos and say, does this work on it? And I'm like, how the hell would I know? So, Google is your friend. Okay, thank you for watching.
It says here Bedway offers his thanks to those who subscribe to his Patreon account thing. Is that what he needs?